Recently, the Los Angeles Clippers and Washington Wizards have agreed to a deal. Austin Rivers will be headed to the Wizards, and Marcin Gortat will go to Los Angeles. There are no picks in this deal, it is just a straight up swap, so I decided to review the trade. Let's start with the Clippers on this one. I really like this trade for them. Obviously, they're getting Gortat. This most likely means that DeAndre Jordan is going to either be traded or just opt out of his player option and leave. Gortat's a solid starting center for a playoff team. He's obviously not really going to win you a championship, but he's he's an okay starting center. And a plus side of this trade is that with DeAndre, I assume he's going to be leaving. They really don't have to change their system at all. Marcin Gortat is extremely similar to DeAndre Jordan. They're both rim running centers that can defend the paint well and get some rebounds. Obviously, DeAndre Jordan is much better, and Jordan just does everything that Gortat does, just better, essentially, and really nothing more, though, which is another reason I like this trade. Now, I do like Austin Rivers, and I think he can be a third or fourth guard off the bench on a championship team, but he just doesn't fit on the Clippers anymore. I think after they drafted Shea Gilgeous-Alexander and Jerome Robinson, it was pretty clear that one of their now six capable guards had to be traded or released. And that's something to keep an eye on. The Pacers recently let go of Lance Stevenson and declined his team option. It was only $4.5 million, and he's an integral part of their team. But they wanted the cap space. And that's something the Clippers could do as well. Patrick Beverley, I think, has a $6 million contract, but it's non-guaranteed, so they could cut him and save the $6 million. Milos Teodosic accepted his, I think, $6.3 million player option, but only like $2 million of that is guaranteed. So I wouldn't be too surprised if they decide to cut one of those guys. Probably Beverly, as he's coming off of a season-ending injury. I don't think they will, but again, they might just to save some cap space, give more minutes to Gilgeous-Alexander, and just maybe sign another bench piece. Now, back to Austin Rivers, I really like his game. He actually had a pretty good season this year and easily the best of his career. He's a pretty solid shooter. He's a good defender. He can create for others. He can create his own shot, and I think he can really do a little bit of everything, honestly. And most importantly, though, he can score, and I think that's what the Wizards need. But I'll get to the Wizards in a bit. Now, cap wise, Gortat, they're both on expiring deals. And Gortat's making, I think, 2 million or 1.5 million more than Austin Rivers. So cap wise, this really has very little, if honestly no implications. I also like this trade for the Clippers because I think they had to get rid of Austin Rivers or Doc Rivers. I think one of them, at least that duo, the father-son connection, needed to be separated. It just wasn't working out. Doc would always coddle his son, and reports came out last year when Chris Paul was still on the team that Doc declined a trade of Austin Rivers, essentially straight up for Carmelo Anthony. I think there might have been a second round pick involved, and I think it's good that they're on separate teams. I think it's the best for both of them. I think I'll talk about what impact this is going to have on the Clippers and its players. I think it's going to be a really good impact. I don't know if they'll win more games than they did last year because the loss of DeAndre is obviously going to hurt them. He's their best player, but certainly going to help out Jerome Robinson and maybe even and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander as well. It also, I think, just going to help out the chemistry and the locker room as well. There's some reports out there that Austin Rivers was just, kind of a bad guy in the locker room. I don't know how true they were. I think to an extent he was, but overall, I think this was a really good trade for the Clippers. All right, now on to the Wizards. I do like this trade for the Wizards. I think it's good, but I just don't think giving up Gortat was the best move. Um, at this point, they have no center now. Like, they have Jan Mahinmi and Jason Smith. Mahinmi's not bad. He's essentially just Gortat, but a bit worse at everything. But he's always injured, which is kind of a problem. And Jason Smith is just kind of below average at literally everything except shooting threes. He can shoot pretty well, but he can't defend. He can't really rebound, and he's not a good passer. He's not a starting caliber center. Neither is Mahinmi. They This didn't clear them from the luxury tax, and I wouldn't be surprised if they have to cut a few of their guys and just and not re-sign players like Mike Scott and Tim Frazier and renounce their rights because they need to get out of the luxury tax. Right now, I think they're 3 or 3.5 million into the luxury tax, and that means that their mid-level exception is now only 5.2 or 5.3 million dollars. If they were out of the luxury tax, their mid-level exception would be, I think, 8.2 or 8.3 million, which is a clear upgrade. With the 5 million, there's not really, I assume they'd use it all to sign a center. Yeah, obviously, they need that the most. But there's not really that many guys you can get for 5 million. Maybe you can get Kylo Quinn. He declined recently declined like a 4.2 million dollar player option to get more money, and I assume also to get a starting job. But I don't know if 5.2 or 5.3 is really enough. They could try and go and get Aaron Baines, but I think he's going to get more than 5.3, and I think he'll probably get around 6, maybe even a bit more. They could get Ed Davis. He would be a guy, he's, again, pretty similar to Gortat. He's not as big and strong, and he's not as good of a defender inside. He's still a good defender, though. He's a good rebounder. I'm pretty sure he can also hit mids. I think 5 million or 5.2, 5.3 is pretty on par with what he's going to get. And after them, it's kind of iffy what other centers are on the market. You got like JaVale McGee, Zaza Pachulia. They could go after some like they could just sign like a minimum level guy like Salah Mejri or Zaza and JaVale and just kind of have a committee at the center position, essentially just play all three of those guys like 15 minutes a night. I don't think that'd be the best move. I think the best move would be just to maybe release one of the one of the worst guys on the team. Save honestly, just like, waive him using the stretch provision and save maybe a million or so. Uh, and then do that for enough so you get out of the mid level or you get out of the luxury tax. And then I'd go out and get Aaron Baines or really any of those mid level, those mid tier centers. I think that would be the best move. Now, let's talk about just what impact Austin Rivers can have on the team. I think it can have a great impact. The Wizards bench doesn't have it. They don't feature a scoring player. They just drafted Bruce Brown. He's a defensive-minded player. He can't score. They have Kelly Oubre. He's a nice 3-and-D wing. He's a defender first, and he's a shooter second, and he's a solid shooter, but he's not going to really create his own offense. You can kind of create for others, though, I guess. They also have Thomas Satoransky at their backup guard. Another guy, really efficient. And I think the reason he's really efficient is because he only takes like wide open shots, which only gets him like 6, 7 points a night. He's a really good rebounder, good defender, and a solid passer, but he's not out there getting you buckets off the bench. Then they had Mike Scott, he's a free agent. Another guy, really good stretch four, but of course he's only going to get you like 3 field goals a night max. And then of course Jan Mahinmi and Jason Smith aren't scoring guys. And I think they needed a scoring guy. They needed a sixth man because at this point, they don't have a sixth man. They don't have a guy that can come off the bench and really impact the game, like, and just score, 10 points just like that. They don't have that guy, and I think Austin Rivers can be that guy. I think he can come off the bench, probably get like 25 to 30 minutes a night and put up like 15 to 18 points, and I think he's gonna take another big leap. I'm hoping for something like 17 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, something like that. I think he's definitely capable of doing. Now, I assume the Wizards tried to trade Jan Mahinmi instead of Gortat, but obviously they'd probably have to give up a pick or a young guy, and I would assume they tried to do that, but that deal probably just fell through. They probably didn't want to get rid of a pick for Austin Rivers, and that makes sense. Overall, though, I really like this trade. But, I mean, this trade could be a bit worse if they're unable to go out and go sign another solid starting center. If they can't get one of those guys I mentioned, they have to settle for a guy like JaVale McGee, and they just have a committee at the center position. I think this trade is going to be look a bit worse. Obviously, if they're able to get someone like Kylo Quinn with the 5 million, or they're able to shed some salary and go after a bigger guy with the full mid-level exception, I think this trade is going to look very good. For now, though, it's still a pretty good trade. I think they made the right move. Thank you for making it to the end of this video. Those were my thoughts on the Austin Rivers and Marcin Gortat trade. Leave a like if you've enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and comment down below what you thought of this trade.